That's
Look at
game.
us. We have some graphics now, guys. We're actually coming up in the world a little bit. Don't expect too much now. This is just a slow roll, but we are progressing. In fact, we actually have some collaboration tonight. We have Moshe in here from Your Best Bets, and see, we had Evan in here last week talking about Dynasty. We introduced him to daily fantasy, kind of at a more strategic kind of perspective. Obviously, Donnie being the youngest, kind of had this kind of young generational pull to sports. So we're always looking at different unique ways to get involved with the emotional side or just the an interesting perspective into sports. And so that's what I'm always after, just interesting people doing interesting things in sports. And when you said that you wanted to start your own emotional journey into like sports betting and then giving out your picks, I was like, I got to get you on because I think it's easy to say, oh yeah, I bet on this team, or I like this team. Maybe it's the Dodgers or the Yankees to win, or you you become a fan of playoff basketball or playoff hockey. You're like, I'm going to back the Celtics, tonight. But to actually put your name and your information out there, that's a whole nother level. So I had to bring you on for that because I do think there's an interesting conversation to be had here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I started this maybe a few months ago. I think in January of this year, and it's slowly progressed where I started to fine tune how I look at the metrics and the stats and everything. But I'm excited to be here to be able to step into the next phase of really the social aspect, the social media, and the getting the word out. I'm excited to be specifically here with you guys, because it's not just about necessarily just the sports.
Yeah, like, what do you think was the most difficult? Like, because when you told me this journey, I'm like, everyone would probably assume it's like the operational stuff of like, oh, what to put out, or like, how do you determine what a good bet is? But I'm like, there's a whole nother level to it when you're putting in that emotional, like, I think this is the best bet. Not only do I think it, and I believe it, so I'm willing to bet my money or put your own financial backing behind it. But you're literally putting it out to other people, so there's got to be an element of like ownership or pride in that as well.
For sure. This goes back to where I really my upbringing of just loving, breathing baseball with my dad and brother. I took a break. Mid high school throughout my 20s, early 20s. I didn't really have anything to do with a lot of sports. I was really just busy working. I did the military. I was just really, really focused on life and then only when I got a job in America back here again, I was overseas. When I came back and I got a job and I started to have some free time, was I able to really start focusing and watching some baseball games here and there. And, I got connected to the Early Edge and the podcast, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And listening to everybody else's takes, and then every once in a while being like, no, I think this is the right idea, and then being right, but who was I going to be able to point to and say, hey, I got this right, because you didn't give it out in the first place. So, I took it slowly and started, just looking at literally Googling, what are the best websites to start researching stats on? And, I got a good list, and that's really kind of how it started. And then did it on my own without putting my name to it for a while, just betting it personally. And I was winning enough that I thought that this could be a real thing.
So what made you confident enough, or just what appealed to you to actually share it? Was it just was it almost to feed the ego? Was it to see if anyone has a shared passion? What do you think that was?
I was sick of losing on other people's bets.
Yeah.
I was really sick of it. I'm really smart, not necessarily compared to anybody else, but for my own personal esteem, I think I'm pretty smart. I'm able to read things and follow the logical conclusions. And right now, since I started this, and this includes a lot of pitfalls of learning and chasing, doubling down. I'm 92 and 69 with a 57.1 win percentage right now. And that includes everything, not even just from like my article picks. So I think I've proven that I've been able to do it at least more than 50% of the time, which is always great.
No, I love that because that's exactly why I started this podcast. I'm a big, I was consuming a lot of content. I'm always interested in like the gamification of things, of like not only the sport itself, but like what interests other people. Like, what interests us to do this in a group setting? Like sports is very teamwork oriented. It's very, a combination of, and I should introduce Evan and Donnie, but everyone's so used to you guys by now. But that's kind of the idea I wanted. I wanted this kind of family vibe. But I'm like, I don't know if anyone would do it my way, but I think the best way for me to appreciate if anyone is able to do it the way I would want to do it is to do it myself and then kind of like work through what works and what doesn't. And then not worry about, hey, this failed, because if it does fail, like you probably see my intros are not the best. I'm working on it. We're working on some graphics, but you gain a better appreciation for the harder it is. I'm like, you know what? Hosting a podcast is not easy. Betting isn't easy. So when I win or when we have a successful moment on our podcast, it means so much more. At least for me.
100%. 100%. You can't argue with that logic.
Evan, Don, you have anything for the man?
Right now, no.
By the way, where are you guys from? I'm personally located in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I've lived all over the Midwest for the most part, mainly in Michigan, but all over the state.
Cool. I spent some time in Milwaukee, actually. My family lived there for 5 years, and I spent 2 years in a boarding school in St. Louis. So I'm quite familiar with the Midwest. And my mom's from Michigan. I think we talked about it. Oak Park area. No, that's where Oak Park and Winfield, maybe?
Yeah.
Winfield?
She's not too far from Detroit, probably, then. More the city area. See, like, Michigan's very divided between, you got the Upper Peninsula, which is really desolate. You have the northern part, which is like a lot of country. It's very green. It's very focused on the lakes and the water. And then the city is a wholly different animal. So I kind of like it for diversity, but it gets cold here, man. It gets real cold. But that's kind of like you, Evan, in Chicago, right? Like, you kind of get that seasonal effect, but being in the Midwest isn't easy for some of these folks. I'll tell you that.
And me, I personally, I grew up, up north Massachusetts area, and I moved down to Alabama recently. So quite a change there, but I don't have to deal with that cold that we're talking about now.
Honestly, I lived many years also. We moved from Milwaukee to Florida. So I lived 5 years in Florida as well. And I was in Israel for 7 years. And it's also quite warm climate. And coming back to Philadelphia feels freezing. And it's not even close to Milwaukee or Michigan.
But I do think it speaks to the adventure kind of mindset we all have. Like, we're all willing to try new things. Now, so when you think about like your best bet, do you focus on, because I looked at some of your stuff, it mainly looks at baseball is your main focus. Like, would you ever like venture off of baseball, or is that like your niche?
So I found a consistent formula with baseball that really works for me. Like, unbelievably works for me. I can't believe how well it has worked, actually. So I'm going to consistently stick with baseball. Baseball is what I know and love. My second favorite sport, and actually the sport that I started betting on, is football, the NFL, and I'll get into that as the season comes. I'm fairly decent at fantasy as well, so I'm going to probably delve into rankings in half PPR. So that's kind of where I would stick to is football and baseball, but I also can understand a lot of golf metrics, a little bit of basketball as well. That's probably where I would stick to, those four main sports. But really, it's the NFL and the MLB. The MLB is my first love, and the NFL is my high school love.
See, I'm strange where I really like a lot of content, but I found a lot of people were doing basketball, or they were telling you like, oh, this is the reason I drafted this player, or of course I like this player in the first round. But I'm like, no one's really just showing you the fun side of ranking. And we started showing you the whole process. We would take you from ranking, our top 20, our top 30, our top 100, and then we would actually apply it to a best ball with the three of us or four of us this year had to actually like meld together our ideas in real time. And I thought that was very interesting. And like, again, people, they do it in a draft format, but when you actually like show people behind the curtain, every minute detail behind it, I think it adds more to it. And that's what I really appreciate with this kind of show is we're able to almost peel back the onion on different layers.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I approach my betting articles as well. Is just there's no secret information. Like, yes, I'm looking at a lot of past 5 games and last 10 games in terms of how teams are doing and scoring and hitting. But I really put everything into the article. I'm telling you clearly why I think this is a value, and a lot of times it's chalky. But you take the chalk, you're likely to dance away a winner.
You're not afraid to give away any edges, like because you say you have a process. You believe in baseball. It seems like that's mainly your giveaway. And I should tell the people you mainly focus on 5 bets. That's kind of your moniker. You focus on the 5 best bets of the day.
Well, first 5 innings, you mean, right?
Yeah, right. So like, but you have that very centric kind of mentality of like, I'm going to tell you why these 5 things are the things to pay attention to. That's why I'm asking though. Are you afraid you're going to give away some of your edge when you do that, or because I know a lot of bettors are worried about that. They're like, well, if I can attack the sports book, that in itself is such a competitive arena. I don't want to give away my own ability to make money.
No, I don't think so. I think that if the market's cornered, I would have to be forced to adapt. And if I can't, that means that I'm not good enough to continue in this field. Like that's like any work. Like right now, I'm a software engineer in my job, and I have to adapt every single day. Otherwise, I will stagnate. And if you stagnate, you'll get fired. So I don't really have a problem sharing my data, my sources. Most of the time, it's because people don't have the patience to really put into it, and then the confidence to put it out, even if they could do it. I don't think there's any rocket science behind this. Yeah, you have to use your feel. I think that's what people call it. But in general, most people are just, I think, not willing to be able to put in the effort daily to be able to do it. And that's really it, and then the people who are doing are just trying to refine their skills to a point where they're becoming better at it every day. And if you do that over a certain amount of time, they'll eventually call you a professional.
Evan, it looked like you were about to say something. You got something?
I have nothing at this time.
All right, you're good. So, but
you sound like Belichick after a game. Sorry, not picking on you.
So that is interesting to me though, because you talked about the adaptability, and that's kind of the thing about this podcast I really enjoyed. It's not having. So I wasn't worried about, Donnie has to be a certain age to really feel like he fits in, or I feel like it's not like Evan had to have a certain level of DFS experience to fit in. I wanted to bring a collective group of sports-minded people together and almost embrace our differences. That's really what I wanted to focus on, because through that we're gonna learn about each other. We're gonna learn the emotions. There's gonna be side conversations, and those like pillar moments are what's gonna make an interesting lineup, an interesting topic, and that's what we found, because we build these DFS lineups on a weekly basis, for example, and we all have different approaches, and trying to meld that together almost created its own like subtopic or sub conversations off of that I found very interesting.
Especially when we're doing a sport like the UFL, where each of us do have our own guys that we know more than others.
Right. Which you can almost embrace, Donnie, at some point. It's like, well, this is my guy, does it work with your guy this week? Or this is what you're hearing, but does it work with me? And then I always find with betting, it's especially interesting because the lines are moving. Like if DraftKings has a misprice on a DraftKings lineup, for example, that's a set price. They're not going to change it. But if you find out like a starting pitcher is out in a baseball slate, that makes a huge, difference in the outcome of the sports bet. So you got to literally be on the spot, trying to make your adjustments. And so I've always found that to be very interesting. Like I attack especially strong in the sports book, WNBA, because it's such an edge in that sport. The beat reports and the reporting is behind a lot of the major sports. So, just being a fan of that sport, I find I have a big edge.
It's always interesting to me, these new sports that pop up that people don't really pay attention to, like the WNBA. Because you're right, there is edges if you can know how to read the data and just follow through with it. Yeah, it is a shame that I haven't really gotten into it. It's just so much more time to be able to put in. And I was so much limited time currently. It's a very big investment, but it is there is an edge there for sure.
And that's why I'm not afraid to like mess up or there is no retakes on my podcast. I like to have it be organic. I like to do it live because I want to show people like not everyone's going to speak perfectly. I mean, I've almost had a stroke on this podcast a few times. It felt like sometimes like all of a sudden you start talking and you're like, I got this. And then, something comes up and that's the kind of adaptability that I really enjoy in sports. Having a disability myself, I was never able to enjoy sports on the traditional plane. I was never able to play. They're like, well, you can play with all these specifications and we can make special rules for you. But I'm like, I don't want that. Like, that's the idea. I wanted to feel like I was a part of a team. I was a part of something bigger. So I found my own way with coaching and stuff, but sports betting and putting my knowledge on the line was kind of my way in to equalize my ability just to enjoy the game, any game really, but just enjoy the night of sports I was watching, whether it be basketball, baseball, football, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Evan, what's the one thing about sports betting that like scares you off? Because I know that you're not the typical, like you're not a big sports bettor, but you did enjoy looking at the NFL odds week to week. So like, did you at least enjoy that? Like, can you see where that can be fun? Because I do think like some people are just so intimidated, rightfully so. I mean, Donnie talked about it off air this week about how you want to be responsible and make sure you're we always talk about on our show, but we usually do it at the end of the show. You really want to diversify your portfolio and have a smart bankroll management. I don't think enough people talk about that, but there's a lot of information on a sports book that can be used for good and bad, and you got to be able to balance the two.
So what's the question? You just kept going on and on. I don't know the question.
No, but so as a person who's not really deep into the sports book, how do you use it as a sports fan? Do you use it at all?
I don't give a shit about sports book. I'm a fantasy football guy.
So then, like when you make your bets, because we do a best bets throughout the year, when we pick our favorite spread of the week, when I pull up the sports book, what are you looking into specifically?
Nothing. I just, I mean, well, not nothing like on a literal standpoint, but I don't have any special tools to look at what's. I don't know shit about sportsbook. I just look at it based off of who I think is going to win, just based off of what I understand about the teams.
Yeah, the reason I ask that is because like a lot of times when you're involved in sports and even giving out betting advice, I think people assume that like, oh, you're trying to attract a certain audience. Sometimes you want to know how everyone thinks and not just the people that we're trying to attract. Like I even asked my mom about different ways I could improve the podcast. She doesn't care about sports. She doesn't care about any of this media. She doesn't have social media. But just getting the outside perspective is very valuable. Donnie, you're the youngest one here. What about the sports book? Do you think from a generational standpoint, do you think it's a problem? Do you like, because we talked about problem gambling and making sure you're responsible with your bankroll. Do you think that's going to be a problem for the future generations?
I don't think it's a problem. I mean, there's going to be a problem with being, whether it's gambling, drinking, anything. There's going to be a problem with addiction every generation. It's just kind of figuring out who can or who should and shouldn't be on it. Whether it's how DraftKings does it, where if you just have to disable your account and then you can't, if you disable it so many times, you just can't come back to it. Kind of deal.
We have crowned Donnie the king of Gen Z.
Hey, he's a lot closer than me.
How old are you, Donnie?
21.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not that old, but I'm not 21.
I told you I try to bring a eclectic group here. Even you being quiet tonight, I feel like is very valuable, Evan, because it's like I don't want the conversation to be forced, and sometimes I feel like you do a great job of balancing me, because I'm so like when I love something, I'm so into it. I deep dive. I'm trying to consume all of it. So like even pushing back and being like, dude, I don't care about the sports book. I'm like, oh wow, because I'll be honest. If it wasn't for DFS, if it wasn't for the sports book, I don't know if I would even care about sports as much. I think you're the biggest sports team fan I know.
I mean, maybe that's true. I don't know. I love my city's teams, and that's that. And like I said, I'm a fantasy football guy. I'm not a sports gambler, like a true gambler guy. Like there will be people that'll claim fantasy football counts as gambling too, or some people will say it's skill based, which has some truth to an extent. But I don't really call it like real gambling compared to like sports book or even DFS. I consider closer to real gambling compared to traditional fantasy football leagues.
Which, I mean, some of this podcast we are amateur on a level, and so like there is a certain level of presentation that we're not ready for sometimes. So I think sometimes we come off as like, oh, we're not taking it serious, but I'm always trying to look at it from a different angle. And so that's why I think it's so important to bring on, this different voice, because so much of podcasts feel like they have to be polished, or if I'm going to talk about something, I have to almost imitate or believe something so strongly. Was there ever a time when you thought about getting into betting, Moshe, where you were like, I want to tout this or I want to talk about this, but I'm not sure how? Because I found with gambling myself, it's kind of breaking down this stigma. I find is the most difficult part.
You mean with my friends or like family in general, or you mean like online?
Like, was there ever a time where you're like, where you kind of question the morality of like the stigma? Because like I struggle with that sometimes, and sometimes I'll preach it so much. Like I'll tell people, for example, when we're building a DFS lineup, make sure you have good bankroll management, or make sure that you don't spend too much. Like obviously I don't have control over the money, but I'm just almost reminding myself of like it's okay not to. I don't want to come off like I'm preaching the wrong kind of message. I still want people to have fun. I still want sports to kind of have that, anyone can enjoy it moment. So do you have that fear at all when it comes to recommending?
No, not really. I feel like the people who are going to flame out on their own will have done it before finding me. I think the people who are finding me are more likely long-term, low-stakes bettors. Who are just trying to read the analysis and enjoy supporting other young creators, really. I don't really have the worry that I'm leading someone on. If someone asks me, starting from scratch, hey, do you think I should start doing sports betting? I tell them no. No, I don't think it's worth your while. If you love sports and you want to, something to pay attention to, and this goes into what you were saying before about why we even do sports betting.
Mm-hmm.
Like just going off on this tangent, for me, it's really about, I have a long day at work, a long day, and it's a lot more enjoyable when I have some kind of action going on, even if it's $5 on some kind of soccer game at 11 in the morning. I don't care about it. If my wife asks me to do something or if I need to do an errand, I don't leave it on 100% of the time. But like just knowing that I have something out there, or pay attention, or I can watch it is nice, especially if I'm like working from home, which I did most of the pandemic. You know, I have a game on right over there. You know,
I started working remotely and fell in love with golf, and I talked about it earlier. Like from the age of 10 years old, I was a basketball fan, but even now, I don't know how much of a sports fan I would be without it. And so, like, people are like, "Well, does that mean you're addicted to gambling?" I'm like, maybe, but not in like that, like dark room stigma, like, "Oh, I couldn't go without this," or "I can't walk away," like you're saying. But I've tied so much into the relationship. You know, me and Donnie wouldn't know each other if it wasn't for my ability to take chances with sports. You know, we met when I was trying to start a lot of these operations and side projects and stuff like that. So it's not just the money we invest in the sports book, but it's all the time. You know, like you kind of mentioned it takes a lot of time. So you got to make sure that you're in it, but in it for the right reasons. I think that's very important.
Yeah, if you think you're just going to get rich off doing it, I mean, you may, but you're not.
I do want to go off on the point you made earlier about, you know, certain people who ask. I do have certain friends that, you know, if they ask about it, I will tell them it's a terrible, terrible idea for you. And I don't care holding that back. Because some people I really do think it's not for them and it's dangerous for them to be a part of. And I'll just tell them that straight up.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
I was going to let you finish your point first, Donnie.
Yeah, no, there are certain people that I really avoid trying to even talk about it at all in general. Just if we're talking sports, I don't bring it up because I'm not going to support, even if they do decide to get into it, I'm not going to support that decision. Just because I know certain people have a tendency of,
yeah.
DraftKings and FanDuel and all the other similar digital platforms are going to hate me for saying this, but let's be honest, it's a digital casino. They may try to present it to the U.S. government as skill-based gaming, but when you're placing bets like this that have to be regulated like this, it's not much different from gambling on other games like blackjack or roulette or poker at a casino.
Yeah.
It's just now you're just going into a whole wide world of sports, including contests like darts and hot dog eating, and it has all the same danger as walking into a casino. So the addiction is still there, and I don't know many people who have fallen down into that deep, dark black hole of addiction gambling on the level of like a Michael Jordan or Charles Barkley. So I don't have any further insight on personal experiences with people like that, but unless somebody has something else to shine a light on, I don't see a difference.
Well, I would tell you that even DraftKings lanes into it. I mean, if you can see on my screen, it says casino on the upper right-hand side of the screen. They don't shy away from the fact there is casino elements to their product. And FanDuel is a lot the same, and even underdogs thought about it. But I would agree with you on that perspective. I would tell you that in a casino there is skill-based games as well. But just like Donnie was saying, there is a certain age appropriateness and a toxicity that you got to be aware of when you're talking about people you care about, because it is just like any other kind of excitement or gaslighting, where for some people it can be done in moderation. It can be exciting. For other people, they take it to the extreme, and that, you know, we all got to be wary of that.
Yeah, and I like just one more point. You'd rather be honest with somebody up front, and then instead of lie to them and feel like you contributed to something that isn't your fault at all. You know, just be honest about it. If you feel like it's not for somebody, tell them, like, no, don't do that. Not for you, especially. There's nothing wrong with that.
I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but to Donnie's point, if your friend had too much to drink and wants to drive home, are you gonna let him keep the keys?
Is it post 1990? Just kidding.
I mean, some people would, though, to his point. Like, some people would, and we all have different entry points into it. You know, like, I met you guys all on different sports planes. I was in a Discord with Evan. Me and Moshe met because we were doing a mental health kind of podcast. It had some sports elements, but it was mostly focused around the emotional and mental health space. So it's interesting how we all get into it and how we all balance things out. What is the one thing that you think? I'm trying to think how to ask this. If anyone else has any questions, that'd be fine too. But I'll come back to it. So when you are dealing with a adult space like a casino or a sports betting, how do you make sure yourself, Donnie, that you moderate kind of that, like, okay, I can do this, but as long as like we build a bankroll or we build a lineup, how do you not build all your lineups and blow all the money?
I mean, I've always been especially cautious with money. I still am playing off, I've never put anything into it. So for me, it's just, I'm a year in now.
Yeah.
I don't plan on doing it either because it's just not worth it for me. I'd rather just, do it the fun. This is fun for me because I'm doing it with friends and that's it. I wouldn't do it by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like I wouldn't drink by myself. Not that I drink much anyway, but besides the point, that's just kind of how I am. I'm not going to put myself in those situations, I feel.
I totally understand that. So, Mose, what's the one thing that you're kind of fearful by putting your bets up there? Is there anything like that you don't want people to do with your information, or you're afraid?
I honestly bet too much.
Yeah. I told you I lean into it almost too much. I'm like, be safe with your money. And people are like, here he is again, telling people to diversify his portfolio. But that's, I guess I'm almost reminding myself because it's so easy to do. Evan talked about it. The enticing pieces or components are always there.
Yeah, it's always easy to press an extra $100 when you're $100 better and just make it 200 to see if you can make up the next bet. Yeah. It just is. It's just so easy. And it's hard. It's really hard to keep yourself focused and disciplined 24/7 because it really just takes one break of concentration for you to really mess up your financial life.
See, in my whole life, like adversity has always been difficult. So I kind of really embrace that difficulty. Like you said, the ability to adapt and just evolve has always been kind of a fun challenge for me. But I understand it isn't not everyone can do it the same way. And that's why I present a way that I do it. And like, that's why I leave all my mess up in it. That's why I do live shows. That's why, I almost want to show people the organic process of like, when I make it, or when we have a successful lineup, or when we tell someone a really good play, or we hit a good bet on the sports book. I want people to feel that excitement with me, and so part of that is showing them, maybe my audio isn't great tonight. Maybe this podcast is organic. There is elements that is very human, because I do think more than anything, we all connect to that human element.
Well, and it's kind of going off of a point that Moshe made earlier here. You're probably not going to get rich off of playing off of a platform like DraftKings. You might, but you're not. And ultimately what that means is that these platforms are just like casinos in the way that they're not built on winners. Like, there's a reason they want to entice you into these absurd contests where you have like 1,000,000,001 shot to win, because how else are they going to stay in business, right? That's how they make their money. So they may put that in tiny print at the bottom where, call 1-800-GAMBLER if you have a gambling problem. And quite frankly, you should if you or somebody who does have the gambling problem. But they're legally putting it on there because, they don't want to admit that they make their money off of people who can't control themselves. And we hope that you listening, you're not one of them.
No, but transparently, we also make money off of, we're trying to make money off of gambling. So like we are the balance between the two. We are trying to like promote fairness and equality and making sure you are balanced, but we also understand the danger. And I think that is the honest transparency you can give people, is that transparency of like, hey, you could win. That is a fun element. There is a fun element to going out to a sports bar and having the extra cheeseburger or the extra fry. Yes, it could mean that you don't get up in the morning and go to the gym and you gain a few extra pounds. But that camaraderie, that extra beer, that could mean a great friendship. But it's all in moderation.
Gov just nailed it here in the comments as well. If you want to pull up his first one, that's pretty much the point that we're trying to make, all of us collectively.
Yeah. I would also add to this, to his second comment, which is just below.
I'll pull that up as well.
It's just like when you go to a casino, with your friends, you bring a set amount of money that you're willing to lose. You're planning on losing it. You're spending for the entertainment. And if you can somehow walk out of there with double your money, great. But you should fully expect to lose all of it the second that you entered into the casino.
And it's not for a lack of self-confidence. It's for understanding that the odds are stacked against you no matter where you go.
Yeah, 100%. And like the one person who went 2 times in a row and walked out with more money is the exception, not the rule. Yeah, 100%.
So instead, so we've already established that you're not going to be wealthy or gain that kind of wealth. But honestly, one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you is I love the networking. I love the ability to meet new people, to have new experiences. And you're going to find that at these kind of places, you're going to find a very eclectic, very diverse group, different age groups, different backgrounds. That's the kind of stuff I've always enjoyed with sports.
Yeah, I haven't met a lot of other Orthodox Jews, though, in this space.
What do you think that is?
Probably. Well, actually, this is something I was going to mention before. So I am Orthodox and Jewish. I'm more modern Orthodox, which, whatever, we can get into that if you want. But our religion doesn't really. I would say frowns upon gambling in general. But there are what you would call loopholes or leniencies, essentially, if it's not like for work, if you're just doing it for fun and entertainment's sake, which is kind of what we were going at, which is if you're going at this is like, I'm going to make my living off betting, that's you can't do that according to Judaism. But if you're just going to go out and play $5, $10, $15 or whatever on every Yankee game, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not a lot. Yeah, I do like meeting a lot of interesting people. It is cool. It is really neat, especially in some of the groups that we're a part of, SIA and of all the people over there.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic, and I meant to do them almost on a weekly basis of we have the dark side of gambling, which we just spoke about, but there's also that team camaraderie feel of hey, if we're right, we're sharing in this moment. We learn more about players than we might have other focused on. You're focusing outside of your demographic. It's not just the Yankees because you live in New York. It's not just the Chicago Cubs because you're in Chicago. You're focusing in on prospects, on rankings, on so it almost enriches that experience. But Donnie was saying earlier, you have to be able to balance it. And sometimes it's literally knowing, hey, I can introduce it to this friend. I can't introduce this lifestyle to this friend. And I think that goes in every sector of life, whether that be religion, whether that be entertainment. There are certain activities that I want to do with a certain group of friends and not with others. There's a certain group of people that hey, they're good they're great coworkers, they're great bosses, but I have a boundary here. There's a territory I don't want to cross. And I think that's important to also acknowledge.
Yeah, there's definitely, you don't want certain overlap too.
So can we break down Gov's comments so we can look at Donnie's pretty face again?
Yeah, the moneymaker, like we already established.
Damn right.
Hey, listen, your face is going to be young and non-wrinkly for longer than ours.
Hopefully it goes on for a long time, and that we'll all be able to see that progression.
I call it silver lining.
Yeah, speaking of which, I just won my second bet of the day. Mariners, Orioles, no run first inning. So I'm 1 for 1 because the Yankees put up a stinker. Even though Aaron Judge did home run, so I did win that. Yeah, you know that the DraftKings had the promo, bet anybody every home run that's bet, they'll give you like $2 to $5 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I've just done Judge consistently, and he just smashes. it's more than one. It's more than one every other day. How do you know that?
I think Evan kind of spoke to it earlier of like these boosts are there to entice the wrong audience. But how do you use them as a smart sports fan or a enthusiast to say like, I know why this is here, but I'm going to reverse engineer it, and I'm going to show you a smart or an effective way to do it. And like, it is knowing when to get in and get out. Well, we talked about the dangers of like going too far, but like, what's the one thing that you feel like you can be consistent about with gambling and having a good bankroll? Any tips for that? Like, because we just scared a bunch of people off and said, oh, you're not going to be rich. You know, it's dangerous. But how do you stay consistent? Is it like, honestly, how do you balance that? Like that lifestyle of like, I know if this goes too far, it's going to be bad, but consistently, I'm going to have fun with this.
Well, you kind of make yourself, like, for instance, the way I bet my articles, at least, or I write my articles, is I do all the research. I know who I want to bet on before the lines come out. I'm not going to be influenced by what the books are telling me.
Mm-hmm.
So this goes into your promo thing. Now, if it wasn't Aaron Judge being an absolute freaking monster, I would not be playing that promo. You know, I'm not even going to play it every week. You know, if I feel good about the matchup, you know, I'll be like, oh, all right, I'll throw it on. But essentially, I would say know what you want to do before you go to the you know, the books. If you're going to speculate is the best word I would say on some parlay or whatever it is, I would do no more than like 0.1 unit size. So if you're betting $100, you know, on a regular size bet, I wouldn't speculate more than $10 on anything, including home runs or, you know, honestly, I kind of consider most player props in that same category. Just don't, it's not worth it. You know, like do your research, make your bet, keep your, you know, unit size consistent on things that you're going to do consistently, and don't do it on those whim things.
What's nice about platforms like DraftKings is that now that we're at least giving away the strategy of being patient with your money and not going into it expecting to make it big, but just being consistent over time. Unlike a real casino, they can't just start giving us free drinks, which hoping to throw us off with our future bets. But you know, I mean, free drinks are free drinks, though, right?
They can give you free trips though, and free experiences. So they have gotten into that.
Have you? You're on the platinum tier. I'm DraftKings.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying they do have that tier for other people. I'm definitely not there, but
okay, because you need like, I mean, those are really for like $1,000 a bet bettors. Yeah. It's really like you have to be losing 40 grand a year for them to fly you out to Vegas for a cage fight. Well, you know, like I got a free iPad and it sucks. It's not an iPad, it's a Fire Pad from DraftKings. And I knew that I was probably betting too much and when they gave me that gift, but then I got the gift and I was like, no, I understand why they gave it to me.
Yeah, and see, they can use that as a promotional tool to say, hey, you know, we gave so-and-so a baseball experience at Fenway Park, you know, and then the guy who's a big fan of baseball is like, oh, I'd love to go to Fenway Park, and then they spend, you know, $10 extra too much, which, I mean, that isn't the nickel and dime of how they make profit.
Right. Besides the obvious of just hedging on both sides and then taking the juice in the middle.
See, that's where I really find that we can state the obvious and we all know it, but like that's where the interesting conversation happens, because sometimes we can all know the obvious, but actually to hear it out loud is sometimes what people need the most, I find. Donnie, what is it about? Because I know for me, you had kind of the same approach. Is like when I wanted to see if I could actually make money at this or prove my sports knowledge to people, I'm like, I'm going to start and only play the free contest until I have a certain amount of money. And if it never happens, you know, and I grew that way. what kind of discipline do you think you need to be that kind of person? And do you think a lot of people have that? Like, do you think we're like the rare people? Like, I know a lot of people that won't even have these conversations.
I don't think you need it at all. Give me just a second, and then I'll finish up with the question.
Yeah. So I do have a question for the group, which we could probably save after Donnie finishes his answer. But have all of us here at least done like in-person casino gambling at least once in our lives?
Yeah, I got
No.
a few fun stories about that too. And I'm not a big gambler at all. I don't. But yeah, I was in. I'll tell you the story after. It's fun.
But sometimes that's what you need, though. You need that story, like the story to go with it. And I think a lot of people chase the wrong thing with the experience. And I do think that's kind of what we're getting at here. Evan, when you mentioned that though, like how would you tell someone to enjoy DraftKings? Like for example, the NFL. We talked about that a bit off the show. The NFL is going to be coming up in a few months. How can you enjoy like the adult element of the NFL, whether that be betting, whether that be DraftKings, any of these adult kind of avenues? How do you enjoy that and still like not give into the casino elements?
I mean, I don't feel like it's my place to tell people how to enjoy a certain something of any topic as long as they're not hurting themselves or other people. I think ultimately I would wonder, well, first of all, what do you want to get out of it? Do you want to just play DFS? Do you want to mess with the sports book? So, maybe both. I don't know. It just depends on the person I'm talking to. And on the other hand, if you just want to tinker with DFS, it's just the same advice as we've given so far throughout this episode. Just don't bet more than you're willing to lose. Be patient. Don't expect to strike big, at least not on a frequent basis, because the contests where you strike big are uber rare to win, such as like Marquez Callaway striking a 75-yard touchdown, who's like the fifth wide receiver on the roster. You know what I mean? Like a wide receiver who doesn't get any snaps. So it's, bullshit like that you have to be cognizant of and understand that this was not built for you to easily win, because otherwise they wouldn't be in fucking business, right?
Well, I mean, like even a business that you're more familiar with dynasty, someone would be like, "Well, it's not gambling." This guy just said, like, don't waste all of his bankroll on this casino element of sports. If I was to push back and play that devil's advocate for you, isn't it more fun when money's on the line? Is that part of the problem? Like, if your dynasty league was for free, do you think you get as much interest or enjoyment out of it?
I mean, the money factor, it's kind of like what I explained in the last episode where my particular home dynasty league is just $30 per person just every year, because that way it doesn't scare people off who have rebuilding teams that aren't doing well right now. And the pot's not enormous either. And, the money is just significant enough to keep people interested. And at the same time, it's not about, taking a chunk out of your bankroll, especially when you need it to pay for other stuff in life. Ultimately, it's like I said in the last episode, I just want an excuse to give the 10 of us to talk to each other. So it's still a little different though in DraftKings, unless you have like a real friend group that places their own individual bets, kind of like what we have going here, and then we get to talk about it.
Well, that's kind of where I was leading Donnie to when he had to mute himself, was kind of to Ghost's point here. It's the process over the results. Like, if you're only in it for the results, you're probably in it for the wrong thing. But if you can learn a process or fall in love with the series of reasons why you bet, how you do it, because I fall in love with the structure of it. Like, I like the content of DFS. I like the idea of people taking chances. I really reward that in my friend group. I'll be honest. Like, people that are saying, hey, I believe something so strongly that I'm going to put my money behind it. That's what actually interests me with gambling.
Did you put your money behind my picks? Just curious.
No, I don't like baseball.
That's fair. That's fair.
No, I wanted to like baseball though, and like part of it is gambling makes me more interested in learning baseball because I understand how analytical it is. And I'm telling you, like even sports I used to love as a kid, without gambling, I don't know if I'd be into it. Which here's all my like traditional sports fans. I'm like, look, that doesn't mean I have a problem. That just means I have a like Dover thing, a different process. Like I just look at sports differently now. Everything is a risk reward for me. Like everything, even down to how I brush my teeth, is almost game theory. Everything has a process, and maybe that's a bad thing. But like I don't know, I built like a structure. I built like rules off of it. I've improved my life. I've lost a bunch of weight because of it. I've met great people because of it. So at some point, when you apply so much of this process into good things, even though it can have bad results, I feel like that's just life in general.
And sometimes the process that you put into your bets just aren't going to play out the way that you expect on many nights. Injuries happen, blowouts happen, bad team chemistry in the NFL or NBA or MLB or whatever happen. There are so many variables that are involved that you really have to just get serious and deep into it to understand like what you're doing in order to understand what results it got you. Not just once, but like maybe 3 times, 5 times. I know this show harps on a lot about process, but sometimes you can go into a contest and not know shit about DFS baseball and still come out with $1. You may not understand how you got to that dollar, but there are just some nights where you're just picking players to meet your maximum salary and hoping for the best. And sometimes it works.
Yeah, and I got to say on the other side of the chemistry between people, I'm so upset that Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen aren't together anymore. Like that was such a nice connection. They were so underrated for so many years. Nobody paid attention. I got him every single the last 3 years I picked him. It was an amazing. Well, except for when Keenan Allen got injured 2 years ago. But besides that, it's every time they play, it was an unbelievable connection.
I don't mean to get into an NFL tangent here, but I hate how many people doubt Justin Herbert, which could be good for us on some weeks when we start getting into DFS in the NFL, because people are going to act like this is going to be a run-first team, but whoever the wide receivers are, Justin Herbert's going to feed them.
Justin Herbert, I think, and this is I don't know why this is controversial, because 2 years ago everybody was saying it. Justin Herbert has got to be the best throwing quarterback in the league.
When he's healthy and he's got an offensive line, he can do it.
Yeah, you're right. The pieces around him are very questionable. He himself, my brother has a trading card business, specifically with football cards. But anyway, we invested heavily in Justin Herbert. I have so many Justin Herbert cards in my room right now.
So sneak preview for those of you who stay tuned into this show and stick with us in the fall. Justin Herbert stacks will be coming.
Yeah, and who he's throwing to, who's in that stack, probably is still up for debate. But one half of that equation is there.
What do you think, Logan? You figured that out in the preseason, huh?
Yeah, I'm still a fan of Johnston. I think he's going to be good.
Quentin Johnston?
Yeah.
We'll see.
He's
got to prove himself.
Yeah, sophomore campaign is really do or die right now at this point.
Sometimes people come out though in the opposite, where they're really good in the beginning and then they just don't keep developing. Like Josh Gordon, I felt like was that way. Like physically, he was ready to play right away, but emotionally he wasn't ready to handle it. So then when it came to improving that skill tree, he didn't have that ability. And so I do think we give up on players too quickly. But you talked about it earlier. It's the adaptation. And like maybe that's part of the reason I was able to really glom onto your bets, is because I know that betting baseball isn't like my thing. So like when I read something that still interests me or has my can garner my interest in other ways, I'm like, okay, this is definitely something. This is another way. And sometimes it's all those side projects of how you invest in players and different takes that make it all worth it for you. Like if it was just DFS, I think I would have probably quit playing a while ago, honestly. But having these guys, having this ritual, having this routine of like every couple of nights we come together and do a podcast, it almost, I'm like, I don't want to look stupid on this podcast. I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about. Like, I don't want to be the only guy who has a 3K wide receiver in DraftKings. I want to make sure that if Donnie takes the guy I'm thinking about, I have another cheap guy to go to. You know.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of which, I watched your podcast where you did the first half of the draft, I want to say, and definitely love some of your guys' takes on that.
Which
And,
one? Which one?
I think someone was talking about Dak Prescott.
Probably me.
Yeah, I think it was you, and I wholly agree with that. I think if you look at his regular season numbers, playoffs, fine, whatever. But if you're looking at his regular season numbers, it is incredible numbers for getting someone probably in the 5th or 6th or 7th round in your draft.
That's what matters to us too. Like, who cares what he does in the playoffs when we're drafting for a regular season team?
Yeah, hate him all you want, but he is going to get you the points that you need to win, or at least to get 16 to 20 points per game. You might not get 40. You might not, he's not going to be a Allen or Josh Allen. He's not going to be a, Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson, but just like Joe Burrow 2 years ago, who
he's
also
not going to be Daniel Jones either. That's
no. I'm a Giants fan. That hurts. That hurts deep.
Yeah. I don't like you just because of that. Gonna be honest with you. As a Patriots fan, you hurt me.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm gonna hear that.
Yeah, it's wild to me how many people just snub Dak Prescott because they pretend like he has minimal rushing upside. And he might not be taking more than about 45 to 55 rushing attempts in a season, but not every quarterback has to be a mobile quarterback to make it well in fantasy football, and he just gets slept on, and I'm just sitting here like, all right, well, fuck you then. I'm taking Dak.
I think Herbert is a perfect example of that. Herbert was able to get 20 points pretty much consistently every single game when he plays based on passing volume. It just is. Saying that also, by the way, I am down on Tyreek Hill, actually.
Well, we put him low on our list as well.
Did you?
Yeah.
I'm low on the Dolphins offense in general. In fact, I'll be honest, I'm more low on Mike McDaniels. I
like McDaniels. I just think that he relies on too many talent pieces that can get hurt at any given point to make the whole system fail. And if you have one piece of the system failing, the whole system fails. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a phenomenal system for the games that they play together. But the personal stuff that's going on with him and the just, it's not, I don't think it's a great situation. Now, don't get me wrong, if he's, if I'm 12th in my league, drafting 12 and he's on the 12th path, I'm picking him. I still think he's a top 6 draft pick. I just don't think he should be the number 1.
If you get Tyreek at number 12, that's a steal.
Oh yeah.
Because I got Tyreek in Dynasty, and even though he just turned 30 and he just has 8 seasons under his belt, I'm not looking to sell him yet from a dynasty perspective. He's still going to have a phenomenal year. I don't think he's going to lose out of the top 10 unless he gets hurt, but I'm not ready to be down on the Dolphins yet. I still think they're going to have a phenomenal season.
Yeah, probably. They're probably going to have a great season.
Having Odell Beckham Jr. as your third wide receiver is going to be key because he's got veteran experience, and you don't have to expect him to be like he was on your Giants days.
I think he's more toxic to be on your team in general. He'd be my first cut.
I'm kind of inclined to feel that way as well. I think that he's a lot of bling, and the ramp up time that he needs to get ready on the field is just not worth the social media presence that he brings.
Yeah, and maybe that's like a detriment to him or his talent still to this point, but like that is the downside to having a personality and then aging out of that personality. Like when you were young and you were using that as a brand recognition and being a brand ambassador and getting attention and you're good, it's going to get you the extra contract or the extra year on the contract per se. But when your talent or your skills diminish and people still see you as a distraction, that's where the negative element can come into play.
Yeah, I think what's interesting here, and Dark Juggernaut brought it up kind of, is the accuracy from Tua could help him actually. Lamar might be. I don't know. I'm kind of back and forth on Lamar's throwing ability because I had him in fantasy last year and it was up and down.
Well,
I think he was extremely talented when he's upright.
There was a tweet that I don't remember who tweeted it that put out the incompletion percentages based on inaccurate passes, and the average for all the starting quarterbacks with a minimum of 174 attempts was somewhere in the 30% range. So, shit's going to happen no matter what from a lot of quarterbacks. And just like with any piece of data, you want to take it with a grain of salt, but incomplete passes are going to happen, and I try not to put too much on it.
Well, we talked about with betting it's the moderation thing. I mean, I'm not the biggest Kirk Cousins fan, for example, but I'm not going to ask Lamar Jackson and Kirk Cousins to play the same brand of football, even though they're both quarterbacks. I think that it goes with appreciating any element of the sport is you have to tailor your beliefs and your skill set for the type of players you have and the type of philosophy and culture you're trying to build.
Well, I mean, asking Kirk Cousins to play like Lamar Jackson, it's like, do you want fumbles? Because that's how you get fumbles.
Well, I mean, you're right, but Kirk Cousins is never going to be as fast as Lamar Jackson, so you wouldn't ask him to do the same thing on a football field, even if they played the same position. Donnie, you back?
Because, I mean, I'm pretty sure Kirk Cousins is faster than the average football fan in general, but, on the field, I don't trust him to secure the football.
That's like saying Steve Nash is a small guy. When I was a kid, Steve Nash,
Small.
right, was 6'2", probably 6'3". I don't know. He was, but when you looked at him compared to the other basketball players on the court, he was a midget. And then you looked at him on the press game conference after the game, and the reporter's literally on his armpit. It's all relative. Would beat every one of our butts in any physical competition across the board.
Yeah, because, I mean, he was criticized as not being a good on-ball defender when he was in the NBA, but, I mean, I'm sure he'd lock all of us down one-on-one, right?
Oh, 100%. We wouldn't even get a shot off.
All right.
We wouldn't get a step out. He would steal the ball before we even came down.
Well, I have a couple things I need to get done, so I need to close up shop for tonight. But I will see you guys next time. I didn't realize we were going to go for over an hour, so.
You never know
You're
what
good, Donnie.
I got classwork to get ready to do, so peace out, everyone.
Nice meeting you, Dan.
Yep.
Take care, bro. So, our first best ball team.
It is, and we can wrap up shortly too, but I wanted to kind of bring this up to kind of come full circle with the two modes. And Evan, you're bringing the dynasties. You're also doing a lot of forecasting, and so you have to stand by what you believe, but then also realize that's going to change. And then when you put it out, of course you're going to like it. There's going to be emotional reasons why you made all these choices, and not like, for example, our team here. Not every one of our selections is going to work out. I know that going in, but if you ask me right now in the offseason to tell you which one that is, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I like this team. There's a reason I drafted all these guys. Now, I'm not stupid. I know that some are going to fail. Like, some of them will get hurt. Maybe somebody gets suspended. There's a lot of stuff that's about to happen, but there's a reason you did every one of these things. And that's where I have to fall back on. When those things happen, it's, hey, I can still stand on my reason for doing it.
Hey, I've got to say, who's the person all the way on the right? RDH21376.
We have no idea.
Just a rando.
This is just a random. Like, we drafted this together, so you can ask us questions on our team. But these were all just random people that we drafted with.
Okay, because I love that first half of that lineup. I love it. Absolutely love it. Gibbs, Akane, Allen, and Kincaid. Kincaid is going to have, I think, the best. I think he's going to be the best tight end hands down in this league this year, pending Travis Kelce.
or Sam Laporta, for that matter.
Laporta is a great option. I would love Laporta, but I think Kincaid is the best receiver, really, on the Bills.
And it does change with this being a PPR website, just like it changes when you give betting advice in the sports book, it changes. If I said, hey, you can, I'm going to help you make a bet and your bankroll is $100, or I'm going to help you make a bet and your bankroll is $50. There's a big difference there between
what I like about
you give.
What I like about this draft, too, is that 2 out of these 12 teams decided to go running back in the first 2 rounds. I used to draft all of my fantasy football teams like this before 2020, but with the emergence of the passing game and running backs now being more committee-based so that you have less bell cows these days, I don't go running back anymore if I can help it, depending on where they fall. I might go hero running back, wide receivers, and then just whatever's best available from there.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. Running backs have too much of a tendency to get injured in the beginning of the season, and you never know who it's going to be. It's completely a random luck draw. Christian McCaffrey looks healthy the last few years, but remember, he was basically dead in the water for a few there.
I have to give myself a lot of credit for just loving content and loving concepts around how to draft, because I'm almost willing to take on all these different approaches depending on how the draft falls to me. But so I think one of the worst things you can do is just be locked into like, oh, I have the number 3 pick. I'm for sure going to take Justin Jefferson. Like, well, what if Christian McCaffrey fell? It's not likely, but what if he fell to 3? So
and don't fall in love with the player names. Fall in love with the tiers of best available players.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that's really important. I think you should have your different tiers. You should definitely know what you need, but like you can pick up solid running backs in the 5th and 6th round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no problem. You are not going to get a wide receiver 1 or 2 in the 5th or 6th round anymore.
It's kind of what I don't know. Maybe there's a better term for it, but I always kind of think of it like eggs in a basket, right? There might be good wide receivers late in the draft, and there might be good running backs. But if there's more running back eggs in the basket late, then I'm going to draft more wide receivers early. That's just how it is. So when that teardrop off falls, I'm not afraid. I almost anticipate it. Like for example, that's why I would typically go wide receiver, because I just think that drop off to wide receivers is more steep.
Yeah.
Because like what we talked about with running back, they get hurt a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, when I'm choosing, what my personal philosophy in fantasy football is relying on volume and how well they can keep healthy. And those are really honestly and the linebackers, but really just how well have they been able to remain healthy? Keenan Allen was a big risk for me last year, but like I thought it was worth it and it did pay off for me. But in general, someone like that is not someone that I'm looking for. I don't care how high he is. And then the other one is consistent volume. Like people like Drake London. I'm not picking on anyone here. Like listen, like you had your shot. Granted, you were in a running scheme. You had a different running back, a different quarterback. You had a different coach and different whatever. But you haven't proven yourself. You're an unproven entity at this point. I'd be much more willing to go with someone like Olave, who has shown really consistency at this point. Like Waddle was good the latter half of his rookie year, but he really didn't show anything. Maybe he has a bounce back, or maybe he doesn't, but who knows? Like go for people who are going to have that volume. I would even include Garrett Wilson in that list, even though he hasn't really proven him. No, he's had 2,000-yard seasons with nobody at QB, so I would consider that proving yourself.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson have a hard time staying consistent just due to the shit quarterback play with no great depth behind Aaron Rodgers before this year. But now that Tyrod Taylor's backing up Aaron Rodgers in case the worst happens, I think you can throw away everything you thought you knew about Garrett Wilson and relax and understand that he is a top tier guy.
Yeah, I think second last year.
Yeah.
Second in what?
Half PPR.
Oh, yeah, I don't have half PPR memorized. I don't play in those leagues. But before we get too deep into process, being that Moshe wasn't here with us when we drafted this team, unless you have something to say about our first 7 picks, I don't know if we could get Logan to scroll down. What do you think about the rest of our team here?
So let's see. Who's who again? Sorry, go scroll up. No.
We should be on the second spot. So this is the first team. So we're the CD Land team.
Yeah, so we went with CD, King Henry, ETN, Pickens, McBride.
I like McBride. I honestly love McBride. I think he is a right up there. I would maybe have gone with Ferguson, but McBride's an excellent choice.
Ferguson wasn't in that kind of tier range for us.
Yeah, I didn't want to go Ferguson that early either. My bet, I was begging for Andrews over McBride for just this season, but it's like a difference of one spot. It's not my hill to die on.
I want to say that Gov was in between us, but I think me and you were the highest in McBride. Donnie definitely was not a detractor. He was the highest on Ferguson. That's kind of where, that's where it's kind of fun to draft with as many people and as much personality as we have, because we have to kind of merge our opinion. That's what I'm saying. The teardrop was not far. I thought we did a very good job drafting, but who doesn't at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have chose. I would have. Henry, King Henry. You just don't know what you're going to get this year, He could be top 3 running back, but he also could be dead in the water halfway through the season and traded to a team that's trying to make a playoff run.
And that's where I love the gambling element, and why personally I can't speak for the rest of them, but that's why I kind of take on the adversity kind of mindset, because I'm willing to take on and say, oh, he might get hurt like Christian McCaffrey, but what running back doesn't? I think he could have a historically great touchdown season.
Injuries are something that you can't really bank on, similar to touchdowns. They just happen. They can happen to anybody. I think even Patrick Mahomes' ankle is still not 100% either. So it's just one of those things you got to let it slide. You just pick the best talent you can.
Yeah. Although there's something to be said about an older running back switching teams.
That's different though, because I mean Henry is playing. At least he's not out with anything. But in a brand new system with the Ravens, I mean we don't 100% know how he's going to be used yet, but we know that Jackson will definitely feed him. How effective he'll be remains to be seen. Hey Gov, good to see you join us.
Woo! Finally got home. Sorry, not working. So
yeah,
not.
It's okay because we lost Donnie, but picked up you, so it worked out good in our rotation. We needed a fifth man. Here we go.
Yeah, I just one more point about the Ravens scheme. Look at their last starting running backs.
Which ones that didn't get hurt?
That's my.
You mean all the guys that are playing for the Chargers now?
Yeah, but that's kind of my point. The Baltimore scheme seems to rely on a heavy run first, not just like trying to find the cut or whatever. They are
like Greg Roman. I'm going to run the ball, and then I'm going to run the ball, and then let's decide whether I run the ball or not.
And it's a great strategy come playoff time. It is a phenomenal strategy come playoff time.
It is definitely playoff ball.
But during the regular season, your players cannot handle that in, week out. Henry is not going. I don't think Henry's going to last 6 weeks healthy.
Henry has a weird shot because he was also sort of doing that in Tennessee. Like Tennessee didn't run the same kind of offense as Baltimore, but they were still heavy, heavy.
I was going to say, what if I believe everything you just said, Moshe, but I believe the exact opposite as a result? Like, that's what I'm saying about I actually agree with almost everything you said process-wise. I just think Henry is that different.
Very possible.
It
is true that in this offense with Baltimore, he's probably not carrying the ball 350 times. He's probably getting closer to 300, 290, which is still a lot, but it's not bell cow.
They're not going to need him to take that much volume.
He's in now a committee. Like, it's going to look more like the road games last year where he was splitting with Tajay Spears as opposed to the home games where they gave him 25, 30 touches.
No, there's a reason.
He's going to be a 15-touch guy.
Yeah, there's a reason they have Keaton Mitchell and Justice Hill, because they're going to want to use him for, like, check down situations or just they're not going to use Henry for everything.
No, but I do expect him to take the bulk of the carries, to do most of the inside the 20s work and stuff like that. If anything, a guy like Justice Hill might not see as many red zone touches because of Henry.
Yeah,
but I do think Keaton Mitchell is more of the passing game back, so I do like him. Like outside of Henry, I like Mitchell a lot in that backfield.
If he can get more than 2 targets.
And the thing like baseball, where we don't need Henry to be our number one running back each week, it kind of lends itself to that high upside. Like we might just like we're kind of looking for those touchdown weeks, those 3 touchdown weeks, and there's only so many running backs that can do that. Henry's one of the guys that could get 2 or 3 touchdowns in a week, and it wouldn't surprise you.
So I guess that's why you went with Will Levis as well for the potential upside, even though it's really kind of an unknown.
Well, we ended up getting DeAndre Hopkins because Calvin Ridley didn't go our way, and there's the element of the stack, which I don't agree with grabbing Will Levis this early. I would have much rather had like 7 other quarterbacks over him, but I understand the need to stack, and we'll just have to see if that works out as the second quarterback behind.
Well, it's just one of the process things. Like I've played best ball for a couple of years now and seen the results of the winners and the winning turn, the teams that make it to week 15, 16, 17. Most of them don't like overstack a team, but they do have a quarterback and his top pass catcher paired, because when one goes off, they both go off. And so those weeks you've got 2 of the spots in your lineup pretty solidly.
Yeah.
So we weren't planning on grabbing Levis, but since we had Hopkins, which one of these late quarterbacks were we going to take? Like where we got Levis, the people left on the board, we could have taken Deshaun, we could have taken Carr. I would have been fine taking Bryce Young, but then we would have needed to get a Carolina receiver at the end, which of course they would have been available. We have every number 2 wide receiver that everyone would want and no number 1s.
Right. I mean, honestly, I would have tried to go with that strategy. And personally, when I play fantasy, I am doing that strategy. Last year I had Prescott and Lamb, which was just unreal. And
Dak is that weird one where like we have our top 4 or 5 quarterbacks. Then we have Dak. Then it's a pretty big teardrop to like the next dude down, which I think that's Trevor Lawrence for us, but that's a good 2 rounds later than Dak.
So I wrote this down.
So Dak would be, I know with our rankings, we had Dak 6, but it's weird. It's like all of our top 5 are in the same tier right around the 4th or 5th round. Then we have Dak like a 6th rounder. Then we don't have a quarterback until like the 8th or 9th round. And that's when we start seeing Trevor Lawrence and other guys like that.
So I honestly would have tried to go in for Justin Fields. I know I'm maybe in the minority.
I'm with you on that. If everyone's going to take Russ, I'll take shots on Fields. I'm totally with you. I know Russ is cooked. I think Fields can win a job somewhere.
I think Fields is the best individual talent at QB, possibly in the entire NFL talent-wise. I'm not saying that he gets it done. I think talent-wise, he has what it takes to be a top 3 QB or top 3 player in the NFL, period. I mean, the throws he makes, the runs he makes, it's unreal. He just has to put it together.
I'll go as far as saying at the end of this year, there's a possibility he's the best quarterback in his division.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see that.
I know I just said he's going to look better than Burrow, look better than Lamar, and look better than the perp.
So this is what I was looking up. I have my top 3 tier QBs, right? You have Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts. I don't think you can argue with those. I do think Lamar is a step below.
I have Lamar ahead of Mahomes, just because Mahomes doesn't run as much as those other guys. So the other guy's floor is safer. But if Mahomes has a good passing year, which he didn't last year and was still very solid, he could just blow up.
So that's
so I would have Mahomes 4, but like I agree with those top 4. It's Hurts, Allen, Mahomes, and Lamar.
Mm-hmm. So
in some order.
So Lamar somehow he'll have 36-point games, but he'll also have 12-point games. And for me, that's not great. I need consistency.
No, he's that's one of the reasons, like I posted in chat, I have a huge bias against Lamar. I haven't liked him out.
So that's
I don't think he's a good thrower of the ball. I think when you need to throw the ball in the playoffs, that's where he's going to screw you over.
Right.
And then it kind of came to true. Like this last playoff, the last game, instead of running the ball all over Kansas City like they probably should have, they let Lamar throw that first half and try to throw them into a win, and he didn't. And then Kansas City just had the second half to do their shit.
Yeah, and Kansas City's secondary was among the NFL's best last year, which was questionable from the Ravens at best. Why didn't they just run the ball against the mid-tier running defense?
Yeah. Why did they switch their entire approach that they were using the entire year consistently?
It's a horrible thing to think about, but like that's my thought. Like, I have a huge bias against Lamar, but I agree. Like, there's plenty of times in DFS I will play him because he has 40-point upside.
Right.
But you're right. When he doesn't go for 40, he's as bad as Baker. He's as bad as some of those other guys.
Yeah. But that's why, like you said, Mahomes is my number one because he didn't have a great passing offense last year, and
was still like a top 5 quarterback.
That's why he's my number one, because I always go reliability and floor over anything else.
I took him number one as my number one quarterback in all of my. I have a guillotine league I play in every year. If you don't know what those are, guillotine league is an 18-man league. Every week, the lowest scoring team gets chopped, and all your players go into free agency.
Nice.
And so by the end of you get to week 17, it's just 2 teams, and they've picked up every good player they can. So, like, on that league, I prioritize getting one of those top 4 quarterbacks that gives me a safe floor quarterback all year.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, even getting Mahomes, I made it top 3 in the guillotine league. Even taking Mahomes in like the second round of an 18-man league.
Right.
But I got that consistency. Even in a down year, I got that consistency.
Right. So I would say consistency also rank-wise. My 5th option wouldn't necessarily be Prescott. It would be Burrow. I think he's poised for a solid comeback with Jamar Chase. But after him, it's basically Burrow, Prescott, and then I have Stroud and Purdy. And I'm really confused why Purdy is everybody's 8th to 12th pick, because he's been solid.
But yeah.
But he's still everybody's 8th pick. No one's going to pick him before these people.
I think there's there was some anxiety over Brock Purdy not knowing who his consistent weapons are going to be this year because of all the rumors going, Debo might get traded, Ayuk might get traded, or both of them might get traded, and Kittle is starting to kind of fade away as far as consistent targets go too. It's still a very good offense, and Purdy is not like Josh Allen when it comes to rushing, but it's still a very solid offense, and I think a lot of people all over the place didn't know where to put Purdy. I think that was the biggest issue.
Right.
See, we're actually kind of low on it. I just pulled up our rankings, and it's like, okay, we have our top 5, which our 5th guy is actually C.J. Stroud.
Yeah. Oh, so I have Stroud right there with Burrow, Prescott. Burrow, Prescott, and Stroud for me are on the same level, and Purdy's kind of hanging on the tail end of that level.
See, I was about to say what we had was Allen, Jackson, Hurts, Mahomes, then Stroud a little bit behind them, then Prescott and Anthony Richardson in their next tier, and then you get to Burrow, Love, Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, but they're real late. They're like 80, 90 in the picks.
And we were high on Love because of Donnie. I think we were low on Brock Purdy because of me. I'm probably the least fan of Brock Purdy.
I think Brock Purdy is kind of like the opposite of Lamar. Like, Brock Purdy doesn't really have 40-point upside. But I also remember him just scoring like 18 to 20 points every game last year because he's a part of all the touchdowns that get scored. And when San Fran's putting up 30 points a game, that's going to happen.
He'll consistently get 2 throwing touchdowns basically a game. And honestly, like even the ones that McCaffrey gets on the rushing end, McCaffrey will also get an equal amount on the passing end as well, which is really nice.
Before we stay too deep on quarterbacks, I was wondering, Moshe, if you wanted to see what you think about the rest of our roster below Levis.
Yeah, let me scroll down.
That is
the last couple picks in the draft. Yeah. What do you like about our scroll the fuck down guys?
So listen, I'm a Giants fan, so I'm gonna just tell you everybody on the Giants is gonna be shite this year.
That's one of the reasons why. Like, I guess the other thing in our draft was one of the things we saw in a lot of these ADPs and best balls was guys like Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison being 3rd round picks.
No, unacceptable.
No, we dropped them down closer to the other rookies in the 7th and 8th round.
Yeah, no rookie.
Like, I don't care if you think Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors is going to be the number 1.
No,
I don't see them having the kind of volume in those offenses that warrants them being picked around fucking every other number 1.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100%.
Like, I definitely take Ridley and Hopkins over those guys.
And that's what I'm talking about. You need consistency, volume, and you need longevity and proven ability that you've done it before. I don't want to see people who are rookies who haven't done it before. I don't even want to see people who've done it before but not consistently.
Like,
So-
I would think everyone would be afraid from last year. I saw so many people taking Bijan in the first round. That was my one big avoid last year.
Yeah.
I was never taking Bijan in the first round last year.
Nope. No.
Now, after what I saw, and this year, I definitely take him into the first round. If I had him as one of my hero running backs, like in my mind, it's McCaffrey, it's Barkley, it's him, it's Henry, and it's like Gibbs. And that's like my top 5.
Pause. Thank you for finally putting Barkley second. Everybody has been disrespecting the shit out of him.
I know I'm forgetting someone. I was forgetting another name and just said Barkley. Because
I don't know why.
Hall and Gibbs. I think
Brees. That's who I forgot. Brees Hall. I would go McCaffrey, Bijan, Brees, Barkley, and then after that, I like Henry, but Gibbs could be there. So could Jonathan Taylor.
So for me, it's McCaffrey, Barkley, Hall, Gibbs, Taylor, and then I have Bijan. And only because I'm really concerned about this Atlanta offense. I know everybody's really high on them, but
how much worse can it get with no more Arthur Smith, huh?
The man who's going to make Justin Fields the greatest quarterback of all time.
Oh, wait.
He's the Pittsburgh offensive coordinator. You don't remember that?
Well, I mean...
Najee Marshall and Justin Fields. Hey, come on, baby.
He's going to have Justin Fields feeding me Cole Pruitt.
This was our rankings. By the way, we did have this full on a podcast as well. You guys can see how we came to these things, but just so most can see it. But I think, we kind of got locked in the first part of this podcast with the dark side of betting. But I think we did just speak to the positive side of all sports and all camaraderie and just coming together. The best way to do it is consistency. It's finding out what you're good at, what you want out of it, and being consistent with that process, and just doing it for those reasons. And I think that's the kind of the whole tie-in that you guys can get from a positive perspective is just the consistency to do it for the right reasons, to make sure that you apply it for the right reasons, because anything can be dangerous if you apply the wrong kind of toxicity to it.
So, Moshe, I don't know if this means much to you, but at least on the best ball rankings that I was also using to help shape my opinions better, I have Malik Neighbors as the wide receiver 28, and he's in between Jaden Reed and Tank Dell. Even then, I don't know if I'd still go that high on Malik Neighbors, because I have been reading a lot on Neighbors could potentially see anywhere between a 20 to 25% target share, because nobody else in that offense, now that Darren Waller's retired, looks like they can handle that kind of workload. But, I mean, can Daniel Jones do it?
And maybe he could, but to be going at like pick 30,
not even
that's
worth
too high for Neighbors.
I wouldn't
him at pick 30.
I would just not take him. I would not take anybody in the Giants.
I would never draft Neighbors at that point. If Neighbors doesn't drop like 2 rounds from where he's at, like I would never draft him. I wouldn't get any Neighbors this year.
I wouldn't take him even in the 8th or 10th round. It's not worth the draft capital when you're talking about an offense that flurries. Like, they don't pass consistently. They have a very flurry-like offense where whoever's in the right spot is who they're going to pass to on the slant. That's just how New York runs. And Daniel,
so in other words, Darius Slayton.
Yes. I would take Slayton over Neighbors.
See, and I'd still be willing to take Neighbors in the range of where we have the other rookies, which is like 7th or 8th round. But I can't take him before the 7th.
I said 7th or 8th round is when I would.
That's probably when I could take him. And I honestly like Neighbors more than this other group. Like, we had a big discussion on those group of rookies: Coleman, Worthy, McConkey, Odunze. Like, we had a good discussion with them, and I still I have them behind all of the normal number ones for teams. Like, I'm taking Ridley and Hopkins. I'm probably even taking Godwin from Tampa Bay before I get to those rookies. But I would still take Neighbors ahead of all of those rookies.
Yeah, maybe in front of those rookies, just because there's just such a lack of talent on the Giants team. And you're hoping, but again, you're literally hoping.
But at that point, I should already have 2 or 3 good starting receivers. So I'm just hoping for depth and volume from a guy who's the only dude there.
Once you have 3 or 4 receivers, you should only be looking on the later draft picks for upside. You're not looking for talent really in terms of consistency at that point, because you're not going to find it. And if you do, the consistency is so low that it doesn't really generate what you need to have him as a starter.
Which is why we all sort of like the strategy of like get one good running back early, but then fill out wide receiver, because they do become much more inconsistent later rounds.
I'm of the opinion of just grabbing wide receivers first, unless Evan, what did you say it was? It was like not superstar, but
hero running back. Yeah.
So I do like being, if I can grab Saquon or McCaffrey in the first round, I would definitely consider it. If I'm not getting one of those two, I'm not touching it, and then I'm not going to touch running backs until the 4th or 5th round. There's just so much talent.
I definitely have my entire top 5 in there. So like McCaffrey, Bijan, Brees, Barkley, and Henry in my mind. If I can get one of those 5 in the first 2 rounds, I'll take them. Otherwise, I'm with you. Wide receiver, piss boy. There we go.
Yeah.
Logan, can we look at our running back rankings?
We can. Well, and I think Donnie, as we do this, kind of brought it up. If we drop, like, for example, running back, we dropped Devin Achane so low that Donnie was like, basically, we're excluding him because
he's another guy going at the end of the 2nd round, but we have him more of like a 5th rounder.
We have him.
I think that's more accurate in terms. I mean, I wouldn't say 4th or 5th round. I would say maybe 3rd or 4th.
What do we have? We have him pick 47, so that would make him like the last pick in the 4th.
That's not wrong, I don't think.
It's not wrong.
Again, I don't think we think it's wrong either, but it may not be right, but I also believe that going as pick 21 is also not right.
No.
I'm not ready to trust Achane in the first place because Moshe is still there, and they drafted another running back who I don't know what impact he'll have either. So I don't think it's Achane's turn yet. I think maybe next season.
You know who's someone that I'm really kind of concerned about, and I lived in Milwaukee for a little bit. My little brother is a diehard Packers fan. Josh Jacobs. I don't understand why
he's going to have an amazing season.
Yeah,
I'm real like
he hasn't slowed down.
I remember watching him in Vegas, and he wasn't really slowing down. He took time off, but like I remember years with McCaffrey in Carolina where there was one year he missed like 14 games and played like 2 in the middle of the season, and he looked fine in those 2 games. But we were never going to win in that season, so they just shut him down again with his high ankle sprain. But, like, I remember McCaffrey had, like, 1 year where he missed the entire season, basically. But had we been a winning team, he probably would have got through it and played with the ankle sprain.
And
then what happens? Then we trade him, and everyone thinks he's hurt, and he has, like, 2 straight massive years for San Francisco.
Yeah, and because I thought the Raiders were getting ready to sell him after 2022 because they gave him the ball so much. I thought they were trying to run him out of the ground before selling him. And then they used it. They exercised the franchise tag on him, and he looked
after
a bit
drafting
worse.
Zamir White. Like I think that was just the Raiders kind of being stupid with the franchise tag. And now he's going to Green Bay, a place that has been building offensive line and run game for their young quarterback. And now he gets to be the whole dude because I know he can beat A.J. Dillon.
And A.J. Dillon, I cannot stand. He sucks.
Thunder Thighs is on the loose.
Boom, boom, boom. Sorry. But anyway, yeah, they drafted Marshawn Lloyd, too, who I would put over Dillon eventually.
I like Lloyd a lot.
I like grabbing Lloyd like a late-round flyer running back. I do like that. But I also like, because I like Jacobs a lot, and I don't do backups in best ball. I think that's actually minus EV, grabbing the backup running back. Because then you're basically killing 2 of your spots on your team for one team's position. And unless you're getting both running backs on the best rushing offense in the league, it's not going to work out for you. So I'd rather take a shot on a different guy than grabbing like Jacobs backup. Yeah. So like I'm not going to have Jacobs Dillon on the same team.
No, I would put up Stevenson. I think he has some potential to really listen. The Patriots offense is not going to be worse than last year.
We did move him up a lot.
No, it's not. And like with a rookie quarterback, they're gonna try to run the ball to get Drake May going and get him safety.
Short passes.
And so Ramondre's going to get work.
I know the majority of us were higher on Stevenson than the average draft position. So
I have Stevenson as my RB19 right now in best ball.
Yeah.
So I have him ahead of Najee.
We moved him up, it looks like, from ADP. We moved him up a full round or 2. because ADP has him at like 76, and we definitely have him closer, like 60 even. So we moved him up like a full round and a half.
I think the ADP was reflective upon Ramondre not yet signing that big extension.
Yeah. Now, like at this point, I would consider moving him up closer to like Jacobs, Kamara, A-Chain, like that range. Like I'd move him up a whole other round till closer to 50.
I would draft him before A-Chain.
I have Ramondre right behind Alvin Kamara.
I am confused about Kamara.
Kamara, I think it has the potential to hold out because there's a dispute on his extension, but he is owed $15 million this year. So if he plays, he's gonna get the ball.
Yeah, I agree with Evan. I don't know if that's going to happen, but there's all the possibility that Kamara just gets the work this year.
And that's where you don't know if anything's going to happen. But going back to betting, that's where you just have to take a chance on high upside in talent, and
that's where I'm hoping Kamara comes in cheap in DFS. Like, give me like a 5K Kamara with passing upside and rushing work. Like,
okay, you want to
yes,
talk?
Please.
You want to talk about the best upside in the league that I haven't really heard anyone talk about? Nick Chubb. Where?
Yes.
Is he? Where?
Yes.
Is
we're high.
He should be like. If
He
I
should be
had the
top
guts, I'd put him up there next to Henry. I feel
good
about
I would
it.
draft him before Henry. I would draft him.
Cleveland
right
still has one of the best offensive lines in the league. Chubb has come back from this injury before. They're going to give him all the time in the world. I don't expect to see him until.
Whoa. Oh, well, hold up. He is behind Pacheco and Swift.
So currently he goes like pick 125. we have him sitting at we have him sitting at pick 80.
Yeah.
And I still think we could put him up there closer to like the Ramondres and the A-Chains and the Pacheco.
Let's just say I want to get a share of him this season.
I have in my rankings, I have Nick Chubb at RB 30, and that sits him behind Zach Moss and Zamir White, and I do not agree with that at all.
I would take Nick Chubb. Really, honestly, I would take Nick Chubb probably as my top 6th running back, and that includes the injury concern. And honestly, if I'm really going to talk about it, I would put him number 3. I would take him after McCaffrey and Barkley. And the only reason why I would take McCaffrey and Barkley is because I think McCaffrey has been proven that he has the volume. I really am worried about the injury concern, but the upside kind of outweighs that.
And then the Philly offense and the way they run probably gives Barkley close to that.
Exactly. I think Barkley has the talent, and the way they run and the offensive line should all just be clicking for Barkley to have a monster.
I kind of agree with you. Like I said, if it weren't for the injury concern, I would have a hard time between Chubb, Henry, Gibbs as like my 4th or 5th running. As on the list. Like I still have McCaffrey, Bijan, and Barkley ahead of him, but like that next tier, Brees, I would have Chubb right there.
See, if
I knew he was perfectly healthy, I would have him right there. I still think in my personal drafts, I probably am going to put him right behind that. But that means I'm taking him instead of ETN. That means I'm taking him instead of who's the other guys I have in the I'll be taking him instead of Kyron. I'll be taking him instead of ETN. I'll be taking him instead of James Cook.
Kyron's an interesting. All those names are interesting.
Yeah, that's like that mid tier. That's like your 2nd, 3rd round. If you don't get a hero, those are the next guys coming off the board, and I'm fine getting one of them.
But Gov, to your point, even though you would take him there, he almost becomes more appealing because you don't have to. And they go back to a betting kind of analogy would be like when they were talking about if you want to make a futures bet, if X team's going to win 6 games, let's just say your Panthers, yes or no. Sometimes it's better to take those chances and bet them on a weekly basis, just like taking Nick Chubb week 1, 2, and 3 in a DFS lineup, opposed to investing in him in best ball. Because if you're right in that 1, 2, or 3 week, the upside of being right early on can far exceed the future bet that you'd make.
I would still throw in a little bit as rushing leader Nick Chubb.
See, and that's the thing is that I don't know if I would take any chances on a guy like a Nick Chubb this year, because right now, based off of news as of, I wish I hadn't closed that window, but Nick Chubb right now is still without a timetable to return, and that's as of 3 weeks ago. I don't know if that's been updated ever since. He's looking good in his recovery based on the videos I've seen on Twitter, but whether or not he's ready to even take some snaps in preseason, that's still on the table. So I might change my mind in August, but as of right now, July 2nd, I don't think I want him in my top 5.
Right. By the time, if he's ready, and it's a big if, and I think you're right. I think that's the reason why he's going down in drafts. But if he is healthy and people see him taking snaps, his ADP will go to the top 10.
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of like what we were saying earlier about Ramondre.
Right.
Yeah. It's just it'll be too late by the time the news comes out.
It's almost like this is good, that we come full circle and speak to the good of gambling now, because that's what I think the good parts of making these forecasts is just being consistent. To say it's about consistency and timing, and sometimes you got to know when it's worth taking a gamble on. And if you believe that Chubb's going to have anywhere close to the season that we think he's going to have, this is the time to bet it.
Yeah. 2 other names that I think could have monster years that, again, nobody's really talking about. Austin Eckler. I mean, I understand that he's not on the Chargers anymore, but
I'm highest on him probably of anyone here.
I might be the lowest on him.
I think I'm the highest on him here.
Yeah, he's very confident in his bounce back season, where he just said, and I quote, "You're going to get the best version of myself always, no matter what." He told NFL insider Tom Pelissero. There's been this controversy out there like, oh, Austin said he doesn't want 300 carries because that's what the Chargers said. I've never had that many carries ever, so I don't know why everybody's up in an uproar, and he's basically encouraging people to draft him.
He basically, from what I'd heard a different interview where he basically was making that same point where he was like, I've always been an efficiency guy over a volume guy anyways. Watch me if I'm with a better offense. And I'm like...
And he's got a good point, because that Chargers offensive line last year was fucking terrible.
It was bad, right?
Oh,
yeah.
It's always been terrible. I mean, let's be honest, but it was at its worst last year. Justin Herbert was getting killed.
Yeah, that's why I'm not high on the Chargers this year, because they didn't have a good offensive line. The only thing really keeping them afloat was they have Herbert and he had weapons. Now you have no offensive line and you have no weapons.
Well, people were clowning the Chargers because they spent a first-round pick on Joe Alton. I'm like, that's exactly what they fucking needed, a left tackle.
Yeah.
I don't know. Fans are weird.
What sucks is that you make those picks for 2 or 3 years and your team still sucks, and then all of a sudden in year 4, everyone you just picked gels and you have this amazing season. And sometimes people have it in year 3 or year 2.
I will add on to the Austin Eckler talk is that I'm a little bit higher on Washington than I think some other people are. I've been impressed with. I don't think they're going to win. I'll preface that. I don't think they're going to win, but they give incredible fight every year. From what I've seen, they have always a solid line. They always have a solid receiving core. They always have a good running game. A good passing game, and I think that Eckler will be used to move the ball down the field with enough volume that will make it worth it for him to be picked higher than what he is currently being projected. I would say. I still think that he's going to be one of the top 10 to 15 running backs in the league in terms of volume. And when you're talking about goal line volume, I think that number jumps even higher.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Finish.
No. I was just going to finish up by saying, everyone was drafting him top 3 in the last 2 years. What happened? You just think the talent's gone?
I don't think it's because the talent's gone. I think it's because the coaching staff that's going to be around this young core, I think it fucking sucks, because Dan Quinn is the head coach, and we saw what happened in the Super Bowl with that 28-3.
I was going to say,
thing.
A lot of the consistency from Washington, I attribute that to Ron Rivera and his staff.
Yeah.
The one thing he has given as a coach, wherever he's been, has been high level and consistency. As a defensive coach for the Chargers, as the head coach of the Panthers, as the head coach of Washington, he is the guy, his organizations come and play every game, no matter what. Yeah. So I'm not willing to just give that to Washington with this new coaching staff.
Let me finish off
If they
the
do, because of NFC East stuff, then 100% they'll be more competitive than people think.
Yeah, let me finish my point too with the coaches that they have on staff. Behind Dan Quinn, the offensive coordinator is Cliff Kingsbury, and the running game coordinator is Anthony Lynn. Now, Eckler played for Anthony Lynn on the Chargers, and he played pretty fine with under Anthony Lynn as head coach, but I'm not a Cliff Kingsbury fan. I thought his offense sucked with the Cardinals, and I thought the running game with the Chargers under Anthony Lynn was underwhelming because the offensive line was always terrible. So I mean, if I'm wrong, I'll be happy to be wrong, but I'm out on Washington Commanders at least doing anything worth a shit.
I got to see it, but I'm not going to be horribly surprised if I see it. But like I said, like I'm a Ron Rivera stan, so I attribute a lot of what Washington's done the last few years to him and his coaching.
I loved Rivera as my DC on the Bears. He was a wonderful defensive coordinator.
I lived in San Diego the year he was the DC there, and there was that great year for San Diego where with Phillip Rivers they had the number one offense and the number one defense, and they missed the playoffs because they had the worst special teams of all time. I think they gave up like 9 kick returns that year.
We have
it's great. You've given up the least amount of yards. You passed and ran for the most amount of yards. You're 9-7. Love that.
Now
team.
we have went an hour and 46 minutes. I think it's a safe bet to say that Moshe was a good addition tonight. He's in our Discord as well, so if he ever wants to join us again, I have no.
I'd say he did a show with Donnie. He did a show with me. I count that as 2 shows with us at this point.
Right, that's true. So he's got to join back and do a collaboration because these guys will go on a diatribe for NBA for like 20 minutes.
I was about to say, if Donnie were still here, I'd be talking trade talk with him at this point. Like, oh my God, Deontay Murray. Do you realize Dallas actually somehow they've actually slightly gotten better?
I do realize
Quentin Grimes and Tim Hardaway are kind of like a scratch, but Klay Thompson is better than Derrick Jones Jr.
Evan, you know what I realized even more? If I let Gov go on a 20-minute diatribe about the NBA, we're going to be here for another 20 minutes, which will be a 2-hour show, which is what I'm trying to avoid. But I do want Moshe to come back and talk more of this kind of stuff, even breakdown, because we do an early best ball draft, and we do one at the very end of preseason as well. So we will be doing it again. I like the compare and contrast of doing one early season and then doing one at the last second. So if you want to come back and do some live commentary while we draft, if you want to be a part of it, if you want to, anything you want to do, I've enjoyed having you. Any last thing you want to shout out to the people?
Yeah, a few things. First, thank you guys so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. I love talking about sports, and honestly, like I feel like I have a lot of reasonable opinions that I'm shocked other people don't have, and I feel like when I talk about them, certain people are like, yeah, I feel like that's yeah. One more running back that I'm kind of high on that I don't think anyone else is Javonte Williams.
No, he hasn't talked to Double J.
I'm out on Javonte.
So again, this is really because of his draft position and not to do with the system he's in, but I think the talent might be there, and I would be willing to throw like a late round on him.
Under ADP, I mean, actually, way above ADP, you might be right, but Samaje Perine was their most efficient, best running back last year, so I'm out on Javonte.
And I would just tell you, if you're, and I'm with you on Chubb, if you're that high on Chubb and then Williams, you should definitely wait on running back if you're going to do a draft because you'll be like all these guys late and just load up on wide receiver.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I do, and for the most part, I do pretty well. Like I think I came in second and first in my 2 leagues last year. Second, first, and I think fifth, actually.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to shit on your point, Moshe. I know you were trying to give your you trying to give some closing thoughts. I used to believe in Javonte myself. I had him in Dynasty until I was finally able to set him free before he became worthless. So
I would have been one of those dummies who picked him up from you.
Hey man, if I as long as I get Travis Etienne in return, I'm happy, which I did.
Ooh, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that.
It was in a package deal, to be fair.
I am not actually as high as other people are on ATN, but I do think that he has more of a consistent value than Javonte Williams.
See, this just proves that you got to come back and make some more of these declarative.
I didn't even get to pick your brain on any picks. All of my baseball picks tonight. Why? I feel like this guy Diaz for Houston. He should be ready. He's gonna hit a home run in the next day or two. I know he is. I know he's been due for a week.
Okay,
his normal averages. Oh my God.
Can we do a quick baseball
I'm down. I'm looking at my team, and it's the only thing I got right was Rodriguez for Baltimore pitching. That's the only thing I got right.
I did tell you that baseball. I want to like baseball, and I do follow it more than probably most baseball quote unquote fans. Even though I say I'm not a fan, my fandom is a lot different than most people version of fandom. So I can follow a baseball conversation.
Is this where Texas starts playing really well second half of the season and just gets back to even?
Yes.
They're not even going to have great stats at the end of the year. They're just going to look like regular. But because they've been so bad, they're about to be so good for the next month. Because I wanted to do that today, and they win 7-0. I should just stack Texas. I might be on Texas.
Rangers are 13th. So I primarily stick within the first 5 innings of a game because I don't like to
I see a lot of people making that bet first 5 or first inning no run, first inning whatever kind of thing.
I just cashed first inning no run with the Orioles Mariners actually, which makes me 1-1 of the day because I backed the Yankees on Luis Hill, and that was just
you can't see when Luis Hill is on the mound you can do it, but when Gil is playing you can't, and Gil's been playing for the last 2 starts.
Well, that was my bad.
That's just what it is.
And now I'm kind of currently losing on my Dodgers bet. I have the first 5 over 4.5, and there's only 2 runs. It's the top of the 4, so there's still time, but I don't know. It's not looking great.
You need the Dodgers themselves or the total game score.
No,
we should probably let Logan wrap us up here.
Yeah, wrap us up, Logan, because I could probably talk baseball for a
Moshe,
minute.
where can we find your bets if the people want to see them?
So there is a link.
in our description.
It's sternbets.substack.com, which I really got to figure out a better domain name for that. I would love to discuss picks. If you guys had, I don't know, I know you guys don't do a daily show, but maybe you could have a section where I can give it out or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I have picks pretty much Monday through Saturday. I usually put out a few picks on Twitter for Sunday's games. And during the winter, I'll probably start putting Twitter picks for Saturday's games too, if it's late enough. But come find me, follow me. I love baseball. I'm doing really well so far. Maybe tonight not included. Although this guy just hit a home run.
Yes, I was about to say Arizona's about to go Walker. Walker going yard. It's 2-2.
Yeah, so I just need one more run in the next inning to cash this, and I'll be 2-1 for the day. I went 3-0 yesterday, and I have 5 picks out for tomorrow.
I will say,
Uriel probably going to go yard here too, back to back. I wouldn't be surprised.
If you do want to record some videos for us, we do go live twice a week, usually pretty consistently. So if you did record a video and it was relevant, I would put it at the top of the show. I could definitely do that.
Okay.
I will just say my baseball betting advice is don't chase home runs.
Unless it's Aaron Judge in the last 2 months, because I have cashed, no joke, probably 15 times the last 2 months.
Ohtani probably is pretty consistent too.
Honestly, if I didn't have Judge, I probably would look at Ohtani. But the rate of home runs for Ohtani, sometimes he'll hit more than 1 a game. Judge happens to be more spread out.
I'm just saying, it's a fun bet. It's like golf outright, right? It's a fun bet. But if you put too much on it, or you expect it at too much of a clip, that's where it gets dangerous. Yeah, that's where we're talking about. Don't be silly with your bet selection, because some of these odds are fun. You see plus 300, plus 400. It's there's a reason that it's plus 400 and plus 500. So
before we keep going down the baseball rabbit hole, wrap us up here, Logan.
Sorry, Evan. I'll keep you talking all night.
I need to give Evan the controls of this, but he would have wrapped us already. But good night. We'll definitely be back sometime next week.
All right, guys.
Good night, everybody.
I'll see you soon.
Peace out, everyone.